Hello! If you are a guitarist who is working on sight reading, then this video covers 10 tips that will help you to achieve results faster. Before I get into the tips, I must mention an excellent learning tool that I discovered recently when researching new sight reading material from my students. Sightreadingfactory.com is a cloud-based service that randomly generates real music for many instruments. It's fully customizable and creates great sight reading material to cater for any level of ability. I will add a link to sightreadingfactory.com in the video description, and you will also find a code which entitles you to a 10% discount when purchasing a subscription to this excellent product. Now on to the tips. Tap your foot. Now, if you are a classical guitarist performing in a lively room with a wooden floor and heavy shoes, tapping your foot will probably not be appreciated by the audience. You do not have to tap your foot whenever performing, but you should be able to. Students often tell me that they find tapping their foot difficult, although they have great rhythm in their head. Not true. If you can't tap your foot whilst playing, you can't truly feel the pulse. Tapping your foot whilst practicing sight reading will give you a greater sense of the pulse and how all of the rhythmic possibilities are felt against this pulse. Keep the scale in your head at all times. Once you know the key of the piece of music, make sure you can visualise the relevant scale pattern in your head whilst sight reading. Keeping a mental image of the scale pattern in your head gives you a roadmap from which to work. Faster passages are much easier to read as you will recognise patterns rather than reading every single note. It's also a good idea to run through the scale patterns of the piece to be read before actually reading it. As you run through the scale patterns, be aware of the note names at all times. Learn the key signatures. Knowing the specific sharps or flats in each key is essential, although this is difficult to learn, and it will take time. Using tip 2 will greatly speed up the process of learning the key signatures, as the scale patterns already contain the correct scale spellings. There are tricks to learning the key signatures, although practice over a long period of time is the best way to learn them. Practice in all keys and all time signatures. There are a finite number of notes, although melodic combinations and rhythmic variations are virtually infinite. Even though you might be struggling to play anything in the key of C major and 4/4 time, be sure to vary the key and time signature constantly, as your overall progress will be much quicker. Sightreadingfactory.com is an excellent tool for this, as it is easy to randomly change the key and time signature and configure what specific areas to target. Read bass clef. Now, if you've never read bass clef before, it's not too difficult to convert bass clef to treble clef in your head. Basically, every note in bass clef is read as the next line or space on the stave in treble clef. As an example, the note on the bottom line of the stave in treble clef is an E note. In bass clef, the note on the bottom line of the stave would be a G note, as it is the same letter name as the second line up in treble clef. Making this conversion while sight reading bass clef focuses your mind and helps to make anything else you need to think about become second nature. Don't stop. Now, if you are struggling to sight read a piece of music, reduce the tempo, but don't stop. This is one of the most difficult elements of sight reading to master. Using a resource such as sightreadingfactory.com, playing along with tracks, or using a metronome are all methods of overcoming the natural urge to stop. Don't. Ignore mistakes. Closely related to not stopping in tip 6, mistakes are to be ignored. Once again, slow the tempo down if you are struggling to sight read a piece of music. Although do not aim for perfection. Aim for around 80% accuracy, and decrease the tempo if your inaccurate playing greatly outweighs your accurate playing. If you're sight reading everything perfectly, increase the tempo and get out of your comfort zone. Know how to count triplets. There are many ways to count triplets and other more complicated rhythmic combinations. You need to feel rhythms and not count them, although you will encounter new rhythmic combinations and will need a way of counting them if they have not been committed to memory. As an example, quaver triplets can be used to count crotchet triplets. If your method of counting quaver triplets is to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, you can use this to count crotchet triplets. To do this, I'm going to still count 1 and 2 and so on, although I'm going to clap my hands on the 1 and the a of beat 1 and then the and of beat 2. Here's an example. 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. We can extend this idea further to count minim triplets. For minim triplets, I'm going to still count quaver triplets, although I'm going to clap my hands on beat 1, the and of beat 2, and the a of beat 3. Here's an example. 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Be aware of rest lengths. Clapping rhythms does not give a true representation of the rhythms written, as claps do not sustain. When clapping, crotchets on each beat will sound the same as quavers or semiquavers on each beat when rests are filling up the gaps. When playing, the notes need to ring for the length of time written, so they will sound different. Treat rests as notes played silently. Practice little and often. Sight reading takes time to develop. You can be more efficient in your practice by following these tips, although there is no magic wand that will turn you into an amazing sight reader overnight. Be patient and focus on the long term. So there you have it, my 10 sight reading tips for guitarists. Do you have other helpful sight reading tips? If so, please add them to the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you want more helpful tips in future videos. Thanks for watching.